Hi, welcome to Blues Talk, our first episode of this season. This is our 13th season, I've just been informed. So Dave, John and myself are going to look back over Leinster's opening 3 games in the URC. I look forward to our game against, who are we playing next week, lads?
Sharks.
We're playing the Sharks, and all the other rugby news that's been happening over the last few weeks. So, lads, good win up in Ulster. You were up there, John, braving the weather and getting your pint ruined.
It was, well, luckily we weren't drinking pints. We were on the shorts. But I tell you, we needed the whiskey to settle our nerves after the... It was like somebody turned a very, very heavy shower on. About 30 minutes into the game, it was like a tap just opened. The heavens opened. We thought we were going to get away with it. And it was so bad that we didn't come out after half time for about 10 minutes until it eased off. So we missed, we braved it out till the end of the first half, but we were I was like a drowned rat for the rest of the night. But the game was good, and it was great to see. Leinster bring Johnny Sexton up to Ulster for whatever reason. Maybe it was Kieran Frawley reasons or Harry Byrne reasons, or who knows. Maybe Sexton just needed a run around, but it was good to see him take the field. And it was a good win. We kind of took them apart early and came back. We were kind of holding on, a bit like the previous week. We were holding on, and previous 2 weeks maybe we were holding on a bit at the end, but it was never in doubt really. If they had scored that, if that try had not been disallowed, might have been a tighter ending.
That was some tackle, wasn't it?
It was great.
It just shows the benefit of never giving up and always, and it also shows the benefit of switching your hand, switching the ball in your hand, or using 2 hands to put it down because he had the ball in the wrong hand. It's kind of, I mean, the seasons have changed, and as you say, Jason, it's their 13th season. I mean, never has so much bandwidth been spent saying so little, but a lot of the times we go into these interpros and people say, oh well, it's so Ulster or Leinster or Connacht or Munster are going really, really strong, and this will be the next stage, and then they come up against us and they just don't do it on the day. And that's what I mean. Ulster have been good this year, but there's a big difference between good against Scarlets and being good against us.
Yeah, and also the fact that we brought a lot of our
A game, their A team.
Yeah. But there's been an awful lot of talk about Stuart McCluskey and him forcing his way in, and particularly with that, admittedly a lovely offload that he gave against Scarlets. But obviously Henshaw had something to say about that, and by far head and shoulders above McCluskey on the night.
Yeah, he's a player that's very, very popular. Perhaps because he hasn't had a significant chance with Ireland. Does he deserve it? Maybe he does, but it's not Mosney. You don't get participation medals. You have to earn that spot. And successive coaches have looked at him and said, "There's something there I don't like. Whatever it is, I don't know." Because I mean, he looks like a good guy. He looks like a good player. He plays well for Ulster, but I think he makes too many bad choices at key moments in big games. And I think that's.
But Dave, there's a starting line there in front of him. Like, that's why he's not getting his chance.
Oh yeah. Oh no. I mean, there are guys there. I mean, you're not going to argue with Robbie Henshaw. You can't even argue. I mean, okay, he has disciplinary issues at the moment, but there's a reason why Bundy Aki goes to New Zealand as part of an Irish squad and comes away with a win. I mean, funnily enough, between injuries to either Henshaw or Henshaw or Ringrose, Bundy Aki's played in an awful lot of Ireland internationals over the last 4 or 5 years in very successful teams. So, that's a reason why he's where he is now. Okay, he's going to be away for the autumn internationals, but I have a feeling that, fitness permitting, that the coach may see Kieran Frawley as more of a replacement for Aki, in that, okay, he's not going to play the same way, but in that centre set of centres that we're going to use.
Do you know what Frawley would really, really be amazing for? Is somebody playing 22, because he can cover 12, he can cover fullback, and he can cover out half. and he can play bloody well in all three positions. He's got a big boot. He's another kicking option. He's a second playmaker if he's on at 12 or 15. He's a big lad. He can manage a game. He's like, geez, the guy has everything. And if you have him at 22, you can have a proper back three replacement at, who's a fast winger, say, at 23. And between them, they've covered everything. The only it might even open the door to a bit of a having six forwards on your bench if you wanted to play that kind of a game. So I can see him, and maybe if he gets a few chances, he might be the man when Sexton finally, in about 2027, when Sexton finally his boots.
When he runs out of Just for Men.
Because as we've said many times before, there's no clear successor to, Ross Burns had to go, Harry Burns had to go, Joey Carberry's had to go, they've all, your man Jack Carthy has had to go.
Billy Burns has had to go, they've all had a turn.
Burns has had to go, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Well, none of them are hard enough.
I heard an interesting statistic, just going back to what you're saying there, that Joey has come on and finished off the game in all 5 of the Irish victories over the All Blacks since 2016. You know what I mean? So like he has done a job. He's been terribly unlucky with injuries, but when he does come on, he can close out a game, and he should have a huge more appearances under his belt, or certainly even for Munster, than he currently does. Just that you could probably write off two entire seasons that he's missed out from injury over the last 5.
He's got the jersey though every time, and justifiably so. He has performed probably the best out of all of the other options.
Yeah, I actually thought he was really good in the third test, for example, against New Zealand this year when he came on and he closed that game out, and he closed it down well. The only thing is that, I mean, he's never looked like he's going to push any further than that. I mean, he hasn't put any pressure on Johnny Sexton whatsoever as a starter, and the selection and the way things have gone so far now, admittedly, it's a rapidly changing situation down in Munster, but he hasn't looked to be overly impressed with Graham Rowntree at the moment.
Yeah, and there's 2 fellas biting at his heels then, and one of them who's on the Emerging Ireland tour. In fact, both of them are they? Yeah. So there's considerable pressure for the club jersey on him, because those 2 look like.
Of course, Froley's injured. Of course, he got a knock before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting situation. I mean, we're going into a World Cup, and we always seem to be going into a World Cup without knowing who's going to back up Johnny. Or I mean, for years we were going into a World Cup not knowing who's going to back up Rog, and then now we don't know who's going to back up Johnny. So it's an interesting thing. We're going back to Ravenhill. I mean, it highlighted a thing about Ulster. How much talent their backs have and always have had, but how much problems their forwards have getting them enough ball to exercise that talent. I mean, okay, when we took off Jenkins and brought on a clearly ring rusty James Ryan, they started to make inroads with the maul and stuff. But in the loose, our forwards were still able to, shut them down to a certain extent. And that's been the problem with Ulster for the last, we say, 4 or 5 years. I mean, they've produced a huge amount of really talented backs, but they're okay. It's changing now. They've got guys like McCann, who was very good last week in South Africa, and there's younger guys, but they don't produce a huge amount of forwards. And until that back line gets the amount of ball that they deserve, I don't know if they're going to push on.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, like you could think they're missing Balakoom.
Yeah,
Doak is coming through. Like whenever there's a lot of people pushing for Doak, Cooney seems to step up and have a good game. But like there was other guys, Stuart Moore, Ethan McElroy as well. Like there's, what I mean.
Larry.
They've got some really good talented backs, but they just don't seem to have the. And then, like, of course, you take out their captain out of the mix as well. He's obviously going to be a loss to any set of forwards. So they're kind of, and then you mentioned Jenkins there. What a revelation he's been in the 3 games. I don't know how many games he played for Munster, 10 or something last season. and no one really got a chance to see him, and he was almost a bit of a Darren Anderton type character. But like in the three games that he's played this season for Leinster, he looks like a very good investment from the club, or certainly someone did a lot of due diligence on him and saw a good bargain there when they picked him up.
I was actually looking forward when I saw James Ryan on the bench. I was looking forward to seeing the two of them together, because what James Ryan has been clamoring for, like James Ryan, I've probably said it loads of times before, but he's an athletic lock. He's a loose head, not that he can't play tight head and all that stuff, but his athleticism, he's got a lot of pace, he's got a lot of he's a great line-out option. He's got pace around the field, he's got good hands, he's kind of more Victor Matfield than Bakis Botha, and he always has to play the Bakis Botha for both Leinster and Ireland, because there's no one else who's bigger, or maybe Devin Toner in his day. But to see him and Jenkins, that's him, because it's not that James Ryan is not a big lad or well able for it. It's just that he has talents that could be better utilised with a big lump beside him doing the heavy pushing in the scrum and the all of that ruck hitting and all of that stuff. It'll free him up to do a lot more. And I'm absolutely dying to see now that Jenkins is kind of proved himself as maybe a bit strong, but he certainly put his hat in the ring.
He's going in the right direction, because it's something that Leinster haven't had really for a while. Is certainly not since maybe Brad Thorne was a really, really good orthodox tight head lock. So you do need that, and I know people were saying that we should sign like kind of Will Skelton type figures, but I think we're better off with just the way the team plays. I think an orthodox, strong tight head lock. One of our former more orthodox tight head locks just managed to row across the Atlantic, and fair play. Like,
what a man! Jesus.
What a man! What an achievement! But I think that every team needs something like that. I think they need. In soccer, Johnny Giles was always saying about you pick players in their best positions, and that's what Jenkins is. He's a tight head lock, and he's done a really good job for us there. We see, he had issues with durability last season or the last 2 years, so we see how he goes. But it's certainly a very promising start.
And on that subject, Ryan Baird at 6.
Yeah.
That's a stonker of a pack. If our problem is we're giving away too much heft to the likes of Saracens and La Rochelle, the three of those lads put on any front row and put on Porter, Furlong, Alatoa, Keane, put on some of these lads, Dan Sheehan. Jesus, that's an animally big pack. There's no, it's one of the big
I would say a certain Mr. C. Doris might have something to say about that, though.
Sure, but him and Jack Conan could be busy scrapping for the. Like, I'm not saying this is the team to start every game. I'm just saying.
No, it's great to have that flexibility. You're right. It is great.
It's an option in game. Remember, we used to put Hines at 6 occasionally, just for part of a game, just for that extra bit in the mall, etc. So you could have 3 really big lads on giving it socks in a mall type game, or in a wet day, or away in France, or whatever it is. It's a great arrow to have in your quiver, and it doesn't mean that you don't play lots of other games with Doris at 6 or Ruddock at 6 and Conan at 8. It's just options, and you need to have all the games in your locker to win the bloody cups. No point playing this, as we found out every season since 2018. There's no point in having all the other arrows in your quiver if you don't have that one. Anyway, rant over.
Well, you mentioned Sheehan there. God, he's prolific, isn't he? That was his 5th try, and I just looked it up. He scored 21 tries in 31 appearances for Leinster. Like, that's savage, really, isn't it? If you're a winger and that was your strike rate, you'd be starting for the Lions.
And he's 22, 23 years of age. He's got so much left. If things go well for him, he's going to break backs try-scoring records of the present day. Never mind forwards ones, Sean Cronin is a great man for a try off the back of a maul, and he's up there with some of the backs in his, and he's played how many seasons? 10, 11, 12 seasons?
Yeah.
Before he retired. So, if Dan Sheehan gets the same amount of seasons, God knows how many tries he's going to bang in for fun. Yeah. He loves it.
And the thing is, the one thing I was worried about him when he first started was his throwing in. And now I still don't think he's quite nailed it. But as you say, he's only 22 or 23. So, and it's already improved. You can see a distinct improvement in his throwing in.
Couple of crookeds last week, though.
Yeah, a couple.
Terrible night.
Tricky conditions, And the new laws that they're trialing in Australia, which kind of formalize the way referees referee the line out anyway, which I'd say of all of them, the one that'll kind of make it through is the one on that they're not going to call a line out crooked unless there's an opposition jumper in the air. So, I mean, that makes things a bit easier for hookers.
Mm. I see his weak suit as being scrum rather than line out. Height is an advantage thrown in. It's a disadvantage
in a hooker, all right.
In the middle of a front row, and okay, he's a massive lump of a lad, so he's not going to be giving up any heft, but he's going to be giving up. Somebody like a Dennis Buckley now get in under him, or while he's scrummaging against the tight head more, but. You know what I mean?
But the only thing is, John, I'd say that the way they've changed the law around the put-in, where it doesn't have to go down the middle of the tunnel, that gives an advantage to a three big lad front row.
Yeah,
that the hooker doesn't have to concentrate so much on the hook.
No,
doesn't have to shift his feet.
Yeah.
But what he does have to do is get really low, and if somebody gets underneath a 6'3" guy, he's just easier to get under as well.
Yeah, well, that's a valid point. All right.
But I'm sure he's well aware of that himself, much more than I am, and I'm sure he's working on it like he works on the rest of his game.
So that win up in Ravenhill was our third victory of the season. I was just having a look at the table. Like, it's kind of, the usual suspects there and thereabouts. Leinster, Ulster looking good so far. The Bulls, I mean. And
don't get John excited, Jason.
No, I know. That was a Freudian slip. But I had to have a little smile to myself. Obviously, not smiling that Worcester and Wasps are potentially going out of business, or Wasps Worcester are, but that there was talk that there was going to be two Welsh clubs that were going to replace them. Mm-hmm. And I have a little wry smile that the Welsh played 12 games thus far of the Ospreys, the Dragons, and Cardiff have won one of their 3 games, and Scarlets have lost all 3. And if you think that, what are they going to bring to the Gallagher Premiership? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not as though they're walking away with the URC.
Well,
why would the English clubs even want them?
The answer is nothing, but the answer is now the English clubs might actually want them, no matter how shite they are, just to realise their dreams of a 14-team Premiership, or whatever their dreams are. But
I think their dreams are of a 12-team Premiership, to be honest with you.
The Scarlets actually drew with the Ospreys, so they didn't lose all 3. But yeah, they're not going to offer a huge amount in the Premiership, but will they have to?
I don't think that talk doesn't come from the WRU, and it doesn't come from Regional Rugby Wales, and it doesn't come from the clubs themselves. It's paper talk, because the clubs themselves know that,
they have a contract with the URC.
Well, A, they have a contract. B, they know that, going into that league would be signing their own death warrant, because they just get assets stripped by the other clubs who could offer more money, have better sponsors, bigger stadium. I mean, the English clubs know that if they draw a Welsh team in Europe, it'll be their lowest attendance of the season. That's just the reality of it. So they tend not to be overly eager. I mean, they had a competition before, and the English clubs downgraded it to an A competition.
That's right.
You know, and that was the Pilkington Cup. That was the John Player Cup. That was a significant competition in the history of English rugby, and the Welsh ruined it. No, but so I don't think it's really that much of a threat, and I don't think it's a threat that's coming from any official circles. I think it's just paper talk. But I do think there's an element that's slightly different this year, Jay. You're talking about, I mean, the Italian clubs are far more competitive this year. Zebre have played well without winning, but played really, really well. Treviso have been winning. And I think that Dragons have gone well this year so far. They were very unfortunate to lose against Sharks at the weekend.
Yeah, last kick of the game nearly.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed with both Italian teams this year. We were kind of hanging on by our fingernails against Zebre, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. They were a shambles very, very recently. And in fact, last season they looked really bad. I was concerned for their future. But they've come out of the blocks, you know. Well,
maybe would that because they changed coach?
No doubt.
I think they changed coach and all their players. They brought in a huge number of players, a huge turnover of players. So I think maybe because Italy has had strong under-20s teams over the last couple of years. So maybe we're beginning to see that feed into the professional franchises. I hope so.
I had a right smile to myself when I was watching the Munster match against Zebre at the weekend, and Donal Lenihan was a bit po-faced when he was saying that he was obviously making the same point as yourself, Dave, about bringing in a lot of players. And then he mentioned how few of them were say Italian qualified. And I was, just looking at some of the Munster signings that they've had over the years and thinking there's quite a few of them wouldn't be Munster or Irish qualified. But, I let it slide just for Donald's sake because I do like him.
Yeah, because I do like a bit of Mannix, I have to say. But so, I mean, there are elements that are slightly different. And I think there's a real sign that the presence of the South African clubs, as was predicted and as started happening last year, this year it's really lifted the game. The rugby this year so far in the URC has been superb. There's been some great games.
And South African sides have won 9 of their 10 games thus far.
Wow.
No, it's really changed the dial, as they say.
9 of their 10 games against non-South African, because haven't they played a game or two against each other? Oh, the Lions lost. That's what it was against the Bulls, I think.
So that obviously brings us on to say next week's games, where we will be playing a South African side. I'd love to see that they bring over as strong as possible side with their internationals in it, and just really solidify this competition, because there's a great, and like even you see there's a new title sponsor now. I know, like kind of an obscure Indian tire brand, but still it's a sponsor. It's something that they didn't have last season. There's certainly more sponsorship coming into it. For whatever, like I know people might have a little bit of a negativity towards Qatar and sports washing and so on, but like they've come in on board as well. So the more money in the league, I think it's obviously better.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd prefer it were Ryanair than Qatar Airways, but anyway. But yeah, it certainly is. The only thing is, like, unless they change their squad, Sharks. I mean, the three best known players are Eben Etzebeth, Lucanio Am, and Sia Khaleesi, and they're not in the squad. They certainly weren't in the travelling squad, unless they change it for the game against Leicester, which they may well do. But
their first visit to the RDS.
Yeah, they're still a very, very strong team. It's the Sharks. Like, I mean, do you remember the time you saw a crap Sharks team? No, neither do I. So I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, there's a lot of firsts over the last 2 years. First visit to the Bulls, first visit, anyway. First visit to the Sharks, first visit to the Lions. These are great teams that we've been watching for a long time, and now they're in our league, and it's just it's superb. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to Saturday. They're a good side.
That's a good time.
I think without, pardon?
Is that a good time of the day?
Yeah, it is.
Saturday?
Yeah, I think if they are without their Springboks, I think we will be too good for them. But we'll still have to fight for that, right? So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a great game. Like we've obviously had a lot of turmoil within Leinster the last, probably more so this season or just during the summer than we have for quite some time. We've got news that Lancaster is going since we all were on Blues Talk. I know it's a few weeks ago, but sadly, all good things must come to an end, and I think this will be his 7th season. So maybe, I mean, I remember being at a thing with Cheka when he started, and he said 5 years probably is the max that you get out of a coach, because there's only so many ways you can say the same thing. Players get bored of the voice.
Yeah.
Coaches want a new challenge. They want new environments to work in and so on. So, maybe it's better to go out at the top where everyone is happy rather than booted out the back door, which might be the case, as with a lot of coaches. That's sadly the way that they go. But we've lost Contapomi as well during the summer. Leamy, like I was listening to one of the commentaries and they mentioned that it's more noticeable that Sean O'Brien's in the coaching box where Leamy wasn't. So obviously O'Brien seems to have that bit more influence within the squad. And obviously then
I wouldn't read too much into that, Jason. It might be just that he likes to watch games from up high, whereas Leamy likes to watch them on ground level, Possibly.
But like we obviously brought in Andrew Goodman as well from the Crusaders. So there has been a lot of churn over the last few months.
That's a good thing, though. Changing your whole coaching structure in one go is not a good thing. But Contapomi for Goodman, that's one change. You've got O'Brien for Leamy. That's another change. But neither of them are. Yeah, Contapomi was here, I can't remember how many seasons, but quite a good few as well. Like Joe Schmidt, for example, was 6 seasons with Ireland and 3 with Leinster. I think maybe 5 with Ireland and 3 with Leinster, but he was here a long time. And even somebody of his caliber, you could see that by the time it got to the World Cup in 2019, his days were numbered. And the fact that we've got that Cullen and Lancaster have gone so far together, it says a multitude. And does it look stale? No, it doesn't look stale. To me, anyway. And I have no particular insight more than the next man, but at the same time, it is. While we won't be changing them all, my original point, we won't be changing them all at the same time, because we've got a season with Lancaster now to bed in the new coaches. We've had your man Robin McBride for a couple of seasons, so he's a kind of change management. We've also lost Mick Dawson, don't forget, who, while he doesn't coach, it has a lot to do with behind the scenes. So I'm hoping we hold on to Leo for maybe another season, or that he moves into a more director of rugby role with a new head coach or something like that would be good, rather than losing him as well. The same, because he signed a 1-year contract the last 2 seasons, so he's obviously considering his options.
I think people get hung up on titles. I mean, okay, Leo is head coach by name, and Stuart Lancaster was senior coach by name. But the reality was that Stuart Lancaster was the head coach and Leo was the director of rugby. That's how it worked, You can tell by just looking at it. The thing is, it's a guy like Stuart Lancaster is going to be really, really hard to replace.
Of course.
Because he's been so good and he's been so transformative to the way the players not just play, but the way they look at the game and the way they look at themselves. So that's going to be really, really hard to replace. But Leinster have always had success in that kind of thing. In terms of when Leinster went for experienced guys, it didn't necessarily work. But when Leinster went for guys who were either fresh and hungry, and young guys who hadn't been head coaches before, or guys who were looking to kind of repair reputations, it kind of has worked. So I'd imagine that's kind of what they'd be going for again.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
You'd wonder, and it's probably just me wanting to happen than anything, but like it's sort of it'd be nice timing with Sexton coming to the end of his career, if he wanted to, of course, step into the coaching booth.
Question is, as you say, if he wanted to, does he have any interest in coaching? I don't know. I have no idea.
I've absolutely no idea whether he does or he doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, he's publicly said he doesn't. That he wants, he doesn't give up his weekends any longer. Wants to spend time with his family, and he's 3 young kids, so you can understand that. I'm sure he won't be short of options for things to do that don't involve coaching, But yeah, he might be interested in a few years if he could be tempted into it. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, because as you say, we've managed to kind of step it so that not everyone's leaving at the same time. But with obviously, I think Mick finishes up in November. I think. So we've a new chief executive, and we firmly welcome our new Google overlord. And obviously with Stuart leaving at the end of this season, and then at least it's not all coming at once. But it is. I mean, it is a lot of turnover, and that kind of turnover can have an effect. I certainly believe. I know people have different views on it than necessarily I do. I think that the huge turnover of staff when Matt O'Connor came in certainly didn't help.
Yeah, I just would be a little bit concerned, as you say, that there's just all happening at once. And
but the one thing I would say is that you'll see some guys who we may be going for, and if we were a different club and Leo were a different person, they'd be kind of going, well, do I want to go and work under this guy as director of rugby or this guy as head coach? But that's not a problem for Leo, because Leo has no ego about himself. He just wants what's best for Leinster. You could see that even when he was captain and giving away his trophy lifts to guys he felt deserved it. And the way he kind of takes a step back and Stuart takes a lot of credit for the stuff that goes on, and Leo doesn't get thick about it, kind of thing. I mean, there won't be a problem attracting someone to work with Leo.
And another point is it's the World Cup. So there's going to be a huge amount of coaches available at that time. It's the time, and the biggest coaching change in world rugby is after the World Cup. So whoever you want, obviously apart from Stuart Lancaster.
Eddie Jones.
Did we not have this conversation in 2015 though, when Matt O'Connor took over from Joe? Didn't work out for him with his 2 years. We were all very, look at Leinster's record. They've won 3 Heineken Cups in 4 years, admittedly a couple of years ago, but they won the league. Yeah. There'd be people battering down the door trying to get this job. And
there wasn't.
Well, we don't know if there was or there wasn't, but they ended up hiring Leo, who was only after
interim head coach.
He had 1 season of an assistant coach under O'Connor. And then they hired him, they promoted him, very callow. If you remember then, things didn't go well. I think was it 1 or 2 games we won in our 6 pooled games of the Heineken Cup.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking anyway.
I will point out that there was one person who said we wouldn't find it as easy to hire a coach as everybody thinks it would be.
Wasn't you, Dave, was it?
John, it was.
Yeah, well, what's your thinking this time?
Well, I think if you're coming and working in the Irish system, there are a particular set of circumstances that you have to be prepared to work under. Not everyone's prepared to. That's just the way it is. That's our system. You have to. You're not going to be allowed to spend any money you like on bringing in players. You're going to be limited on that. You're going to have a certain limit of access to your best players. But that's the swings and roundabouts are that those best players get really, really looked after. You're not going to have to worry really about them being poached to go elsewhere. There's a certain stability there, and you have this, academy system that brings through a constant supply of players. So swings and roundabouts, but not everybody likes the roundabouts.
But can I just add to that, Dave? You're dead right, actually. But I just add to that, there's quirks in all the different particular countries and leagues. like I heard Jackman talking about, you know, the president of the club would come into the dressing room after a defeat and read the riot act, threaten all the players with, you know, cuts in salary, or if they were in the south of France and they were playing in Paris, that they were getting the bus instead of flying or getting the train, you know, like, and they call it the electric shock treatment. And when, you know, Jackman actually says this is the kind of philosophy that's thought to new coaches coming through, that, you know, you kind of go in and read the riot act to players. And, you know, he was saying, well, like, that just wouldn't work in a, say, an Irish environment, because the players don't really respond to that. And they might respond, the French players might, but the Kiwis and the Islanders don't really respond to it either. So, you know, there's all these kind of quirks within each particular league. You know, in England, like, they have a very strict, or, you know, reduced salary cap, and people, like coaches, have to work within that, where if they were coming from an Irish environment, maybe they wouldn't have to. Do you know what I mean? So everywhere is different. Everywhere has some form of restrictions. And while, you know, someone coming into Leinster or one of the other provinces might sort of have raised eyebrows and say, oh, you mean I can only have the best players for 50% of the games? You know, whereas he might, if he was coming from coaching in England, he might expect to have his best players for 70 or 80% of the games. So, you know, each country is different, and they just have to adapt to it.
No, I agree entirely. That's true, that they all have the quirks. So it's a matter of finding the guy who's happy with our particular set of quirks, and we have been lucky with. I mean, we've hired good coaches in Ireland generally. Now, it hasn't always worked out, but, you know, you get guys like, say, for example, Dan McFarland up at Ulster. You know, we had Joe Schmidt, we had Michael Cheika, we have Leo, we had Stuart. We've got, like, all the guys, the new guys who've come in Munster. Mike Prendergast was a big signature signing into the Irish game, because he'd been very successful in France. Graham Rowntree is one of the, as older gentlemen, Graham Rowntree would be a bit of a legend and part of the ABC club, you know. So having these guys come into the environment, Pat Lam, another one, even Razzie Erasmus, spoofer and all that he is, having him in the Irish system was showed that the Irish system can attract the very best coaching, and I think that's really important. I think if you spend all your money on a player, if that player gets injured, he's gone. You spend all your money on a coach, you have 3 or 4 of those players.
Well, we often hear, you know, how much the players have learned by working under. Well, you know, some players would have said that about Schmidt. You know, the younger players now have had, fellas in Leinster, for example, have been coached by Lancaster for, it's just going to be their 7th season. Like, that's a good old chunk. That's 80-90% maybe of someone's career. They're going to be coached by one of the best coaches in the game. And you know, but I suppose we'll only see whenever Leinster make the announcement of who the replacement for Stuart's going to be. But it'll be interesting, all right, to see. But, like, I like the way that, you know, similar to what Liverpool did in the 70s and 80s, they had the boot room. You know, it's good to see some of our old boys like Sean O'Brien coming back in. Obviously, Leo's there, but, you know,
Goodman, technically.
Goodman, yes. Guy Easterby, Contepomi. I do like that they were kind of have a Leinster ethos, and these guys are, if they want to get into coaching, that there's an opportunity for them to cut their teeth at, you know, an assistant level, and then if they want to progress and move on, obviously they can. Like, Contepomi's gone on now to be involved with his national team, and, like, you know, no one's going to stand in the way of him doing that. But I do like the way that we have this, rather than thinking that if we look external, it has to be better than what we have. Yeah. You know, like, that's a very Irish thing, is, oh, well, once he has a Kiwi accent, he's got to be better than the Irish guy. But if you look at Leinster, look how many of the coaches are ex-players, because that team has been successful that they played for, and they have an ethos, and they want to continue that on, as I say, the Leinster way. And I just think that's
what Leinster have done is they've struck the balance. You do have to strike it, like, you have to keep that uniqueness that not just Leinster, Munster has it, Ulster has it, Connacht. We have to keep that uniqueness of your province, your provincial identity, but also you can't be too incestuous. You want to bring fresh DNA into the system, and that's so you have your guy like that comes in, like we'll say like Stuart Lancaster or whoever, Robin McBride or whoever, and brings something new and adds that. It's like the Borg say, it adds to our uniqueness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have a Heineken Cup draw. It's already been made. Obviously, we weren't around for the first few games of the season. So we've got Gloucester and Racing. It seems quite unusual that they haven't announced the dates of or certainly for the match. I mean, it's only 9 weeks away in Paris.
It's shocking.
I mean, it said the fixture, where it's going to be, what city it's going to be in, like
what country it's going to be in.
Yeah. It's a fucking joke. Like, the one game that you want to know about is the away one in France as a travelling supporter. It's the one, and it's also first. It's the kickoff of the whole tournament. It doesn't really matter if the other game, for us as travelling fans, it doesn't really matter so much about the other games, when they're on, what station they're on, what's happening with them. I believe RTE have announced the dates of the...
Yeah, they have, yeah.
And there's not a peep out of the Nigel's website on the Champions Cup. Nothing. So that's, and obviously it's partly to do with Racing not having their stadium available.
But John, can I just
be forced to choose?
But you think that they would have had a little bit of joined up thinking, and they would have said, like, Leinster are probably in the top 5 European teams, as are Racing. It would be a big showpiece game to have the two of them playing each other in the preliminary rounds. So we'll do everything we can to have the razzmatazz of that game in Paris in their indoor arena, and possibly have the return fixture in the 50,000 seat Aviva Stadium. So you swap the fixtures around and you say, it doesn't work out in the match in December for the game to be played in Paris. So play that game in Dublin in December, and play the game when the indoor arena is available in January, and just swap the fixtures.
It is. Presuming it is available in January.
Well, obviously presuming it is, but I mean,
yeah, it is very disappointing. I mean, it's disappointing from a fan's perspective as well, because obviously Paris is one of those destinations you want to go to in the first place, and secondly, that stadium is something that you want to see, in the flesh, as it were, and we're certainly not going to get to see the latter. And nobody knows if we're going to get to see the former either, because we don't know where we're going to play. It could be Lens, it could be Brussels, it could be God only knows where. It still could be Paris. They could play the game in Stade de Colombe or anywhere. You never know.
Yeah, but it just doesn't seem like this is the showpiece and the most prestigious club tournament in Europe.
Yeah, it's a bit Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just my little rant there.
We fully support your rant there, Jason. Definitely.
I subscribe to your newsletter, Jason.
Good. Another item that probably would have had some people's blood boiling was the Emerging Ireland tour to SA. What's your views on it, gents? Like, should the players have been allowed to stay in Ireland and play for their provinces, or do you think it's a good thing that they've gone away?
I think it's probably a good thing on balance. It's a bit of a pisser as a Leinster, Munster, Ulster, Connacht fan, but it's, as somebody said, are any of these players going to get within an ass's roar of a starting spot or a spot on the plane on in the World Cup? No, they're not. But
I don't know about that, John. I mean, I'll tell you why I disagree, because there's some we know are gone on that tour to rehab. So guys like, say, for example, Robert Balakoon. He's in with a genuine chance of making the plane. Neil Doak is in with a genuine chance of making the plane. I would say Cian Prendergast is in with a genuine chance of making the plane. So there are guys there. Antoine Frisch has been brought into Irish rugby. He's not there to make up the numbers, So
Frawley would have been.
Frawley, who would have originally been on the tour. So yes. Now here's the thing. I think it's a bad idea from, like, we're talking about, say, Europe and things not been ready and Mickey Mousedness. I mean, sending 30 players from one of the leading nations in the URC to play some of the players from another of the nations in the URC outside the URC is not, I don't think, is the greatest idea. But here's the thing, right? If Ireland win a quarterfinal at the World Cup, it's a great idea. If Ireland don't win a quarterfinal at the World Cup, it's not a great idea, because
I don't think anyone
like I've always said, Jay, and I've always said that I don't think the IRFU thinks that the World Cup is all that important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this year, with the games they're organising and the fixtures that they've organised all through the season, with A matches, with the South African Munster game, Leinster playing Chile, it's all about getting players extra games.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that it shows that the IRFU are taking the World Cup seriously. And I think this is part of that.
Yeah. What's the definition of insanity? You know, we've done the same thing for many World Cups and we've had the same result. So they have to try something different.
Yeah, change it up a bit. Yeah.
Right?
Well, we have tried different things. Look, Eddie O'Sullivan in 2007. We've tried different things every year after that. But anyway, let's not reinvent the past.
The one thing I still think that that game, the game against who was it? It was in 2011 or 2015 when we had about 1 million injuries and we were super skinny in terms of player depth. Yeah. I think that is still
Bayon, was it?
Yeah, I think that is still a huge.
Where Driscoll got injured?
No. I'm talking about 2000 when
Argentina in Wales. That one?
Yeah. Right. I think that's still kind of a major checkpoint in the organisation of Irish rugby about how things could go wrong. So their thought is more depth. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we can blame Lucifora. I'll be first in line.
It's a win-win for you, Dave. If not Irish rugby.
Finally, before we go, Dave, I know that you take a keen interest in this, but what's your views on the new jersey?
The Leinster jersey. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
It is.
I even like it.
It's an absolute. It's my favorite Leinster jersey. I can't remember. It's a great Leinster jersey. It's a really, really good one. The away jersey is really nice too, actually, I think. But yeah, no, it's a cracker.
Have we seen a European jersey? Or are we using the same one as last year, or what's going on there?
To date, I think we're using the same one. I haven't seen a new one been talked about, been launched. But no, Adidas seem to be on a bit of a roll with the new jersey.
It's the first jersey I've bought.
I think it's our best jersey. I mean, people would argue what different. I like the one we wore in the final in 2018. I thought that was a cracking jersey, and I liked the jersey we wore in the final. Was in the final? No, it wasn't. It was in the European jersey the year we won the Challenge Cup. I thought that was a lovely jersey as well, with the silver kind of trim on it. But I think it's a great jersey. I've spent too much time talking about this jersey already. We haven't even mentioned Jason, only in passing, the prospects for John's second favourite team.
Oh yes, which one's that? Is that Cardiff, Glasgow, Ospreys?
Who's your second favourite team this year, John?
My second favourite team in the competition would be Connacht. I think everybody's second favourite team, surely. Followed by, it varies between Ulster and Munster, but, you know.
In Wales, though, John. What's your favourite team in Wales?
Favourite team in Wales is the Ospreys, for sure.
How do you think they'll do?
I don't think any of the teams in Wales are going to have a good season, to be honest.
They play Ulster away. That's a tricky game for them, I would say.
Yeah.
They have a nice jersey.
They're in a dark place. All the Welsh teams are in a dark place, not necessarily of their own making. There's so many ingredients. We're not going to go into it. There's a salad of ingredients that have gone up to put the Welsh
smorgasbord
in the position they're in, and you know they're not all of their own making, shall we say, but they are where they are, and I hope I'd love to see them playing really well. I'd love to see them get better. I'd love to see them really make a mark on this league. Now that the South Africans are in it, it's the best bloody league in the world now, on paper at least.
Yeah.
We should see winners of Europe coming from it on a regular basis, I would have thought. The South Africans really make it. Okay, you can argue that the travel is ridiculous and all of that stuff, but you know, it works for the people who are not traveling, shall we say. It works for the people as regards time zones and all that kind of stuff.
It's it.
Much more than it did for the South Africans to be in Super Rugby. So, it has half a chance of being the best league in the world, I would suggest.
I have a soft spot. I always have a soft spot. Seems we're decided on favourite Welsh teams for the Scarlets. I always liked the Scarlets. I always had a great time in Clonetty. Found the people to be very nice and a great rugby town. That has, as John said, has had that smorgasbord of difficulties as well. But I always enjoy watching Scarlets. Scarlets have an attitude to rugby that would be similar to Leinster's. You know, they do play a very expansive style of rugby that's enjoyable to watch. I mean, the Scarlets Ulster game was a cracking game to watch. There the other week. So, you know, but they really have to get Welsh rugby has to get its SH1T together. You know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think in Scotland there seems to be a bit of a shift from Glasgow to Edinburgh in the axis of what happened last year. But like we saw Glasgow in the semi-final against Leinster, and they got absolutely hammered. I mean, was it nearly 60 points?
It was embarrassing,
yeah.
You know, like they just literally didn't fire a shot, and that was in a quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Of the league, yeah.
You only got as far as the semi, Jay, sadly.
You know, I did. No, absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, and
then of course, Edinburgh have signed Duhan van der Merwe out of the car crash in Worcester.
Mm.
So that'll add something to their team, you know, because he's definitely a finisher.
Yeah, but just Connacht obviously take on Munster, but it's going to be the first game that's going to be played on their new 4G pitch. You know,
termed by Rory O'Connor in the Independent this week, the Desperation Derby.
Mm-hmm. Well, they need something because Connacht, obviously no wins from their opening three. Don't even have a bonus points in their opening three games.
Apparently,
their talisman is missing until November.
Yeah, although apparently Jack Carty might be back for this one.
Good. But I was just going through it. I think that's the fifth ground now in the league that's played on artificial surfaces, which I know some people don't like it for the safety and injuries and so on, but it does make the game much faster. Particularly, we play a large chunk of our games in pretty crappy weather in November, December, January, February, when some pitches used to be certainly the sports ground could be a quagmire. If you get stuck down in one corner, you just weren't getting out. Now there's no slope in it. Now, it hopefully will encourage running fast rugby to be played.
I don't know. I mean, I still think in the sports ground, somehow Connacht will find a way to have a muddy 4G pitch.
Well, I'm one thing for sure, they'll blow a lead anyway. They seem to do that on very regular basis.
Connacht, I really enjoy watching Connacht because they have a certain jouet attitude to the game, but they've just been playing like drains. Okay, they're missing really key players. They're missing Cian Prendergast, who's in South Africa. Bundy Aki suspended. Jack Carty's been injured. You know, they've had a lot of guys out for various different reasons, and that's really hurt them. But sometimes they got absolutely plastered by Ulster there at the start of the season, and they haven't looked any better since.
Anyway, boys, it's been a pleasure for our first episode this season. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for watching. If you are, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter. What else are we on, Dave? Instagram. Oh, do we have any questions?
We're not on Instagram. We're not attractive enough for Instagram, Jason, and we can't influence anyone.
Do we have any questions from our viewer?
No, we don't, because I didn't ask them for any.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Maybe next week.
Walk before we can run, Jason. Walk before we can run.
Very true. Very true. Anyway, boys, as ever, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching. Cheers.